Irradiation tells a story of a scientist volunteering to examine a mysteriously irradiated site, but while being escorted to the site, he experiences strange visions along the way. My name is Sava Živković. I wrote and directed Irradiation, and I wanted to share the wonderful experience I've had whilst creating this short film. So I've been working with CG animation for over 13 years now, and even though I absolutely love the world of animation and the freedom it gives, there's a flip side to it. One of my favorite aspects of filmmaking is cinematography, but when it comes to 3D or virtual cinematography, the processes of composition and lighting can sometimes be separated by months and months of work due to the nature of CGI workflows. Traditionally, you would compose your shots in the previous stage, and this stage is usually very rough and uninspiring looking due to how early in the animation process it is set. You're basically working with placeholder assets, but nevertheless, this is one of the most important parts of the whole animation process. You're setting all the shots, the editing, the pacing, and for the most part, this is where you make your film. The big problem, however, is you're doing all of this without the presence of the most crucial aspect to cinematography: light. Lighting is something that usually comes at the very end of the process once all the assets and animations are completed. So oftentimes you have to mold the light to your existing shots, since most cameras and environments are usually locked and there's very little room for experimenting. There's an inherent rigidity to this process that frankly I started to grow tired of, and I needed to try something different. Taking inspiration from live action workflows, I wanted to try a new process, a process that would be more opportunistic in how I tackled cinematography, something more reactive rather than pre-planned. This is where Unreal Engine comes into play. With Unreal Engine, everything is real-time and right in front of you. You're seeing texture, reflections, shadows, you're seeing light in all of its glory in real time, bouncing off of complex animations and materials. This experience fills you with ideas you wouldn't normally think of when working in an underwhelming grayscale environment in some 3D software. There might be a shadow you weren't planning on, but you accidentally stumble upon it, and it creates an interesting shape that helps your composition. Or there might be a puddle reflecting your character, and maybe showing the character through that puddle has a deeper meaning for your story. Try finding that reflection via traditional means. In my early days of working with Unreal Engine, I found the process to be absolutely liberating, but much like with a new camera, in order to fully start to grasp all of its advantages and disadvantages, I needed to make a film. It just so happened that right at the time when I was exploring Unreal Engine, my friend Jama Jorabayev needed a trailer for one of the asset packs he makes with his team over at Big Medium Small. The asset pack in question is called Post-Apocalypse, and the setting of this collection combined with the existing character backstories are some of the early influences that have inspired the story for Irradiation. Big Medium Small pride themselves in creating assets that help tell stories, so instead of making just a trailer, I thought there's no better way to support this statement than by making a short film. So now that I had a story and all of the assets ready from the get-go, I felt I was in a great position to finally try out this, for me, new process of making an animated short. The goal was not to rely on a traditional pre-planned previs process, as it would defeat the very purpose of why I wanted to do this project with Unreal Engine in the first place. Therefore, after the script was done, I decided to jump straight into performance capture and let that aspect dictate the cinematography and editing pace. Another interesting turn of events was the fact that my real-time experience coincided with that of my friends from Take One, who were on an Unreal Engine journey of their own. Take One is a motion capture and animation studio from Belgrade, and right when I was wrapping up the script and prepping the shoot, they had just finished upgrading their studio to full Unreal Engine and remote shoot capabilities. When working with mocap traditionally, similar as the previous stage, it's rather uninspiring for the actors to see themselves as grey placeholder models. But with the use of Unreal Engine on the mocap stage, we could bring in our lit environments and characters, combined with realistic materials and all working in real time with a look that's very indicative of the final film. It provides for a much more immersive experience for the actors. They can see how they look like, how the character design might constrain or restrict their movement. And they can see and feel the environment they're in without resorting solely to their imagination. This can provide for some interesting moments of discovery. The actors can see something they normally wouldn't, and that might trigger an exchange of ideas which you might not have thought of before the shoot. In a way, it's similar to arriving with actors on a live-action set. You've rehearsed it before, but now you're in that environment for the first time together, and immediately new ideas start surfacing because now there are strong visual influences. Another great addition to the overall experience was the use of a virtual camera. The camera rig has a wireless monitor which enables you to walk around the actors freely and explore the shots. Directing motion capture has always been more akin to theater because you're capturing a collection of actions in a single take rather than filming on a shot-by-shot basis. It's just much more efficient that way. But this approach tends to neglect the fact that you are not looking at the performance in the context of the shot. You're looking at the full body performance, hence the comparison to theater. Having a virtual camera changes this by allowing you to frame up your shots with lighting in real time on the stage, much like you would with live action, all while still retaining the full control to change any given aspect to the camera motion, lens choices, and lighting later on once the shoot is complete. Once the motion capture shoot was finished, assembling the scenes and editing the film was some of the most fun I've ever had working on an animated short. You import the animation and behold, it's all there. An infinitely loopable performance you've captured is playing right in front of you with all the materials and lighting in complete real time. Now you get to make all of your cinematography choices, and the beauty of it for me is you're not guided by the previs, you're simply reacting to the performance in front of you. Going in with some sort of a plan is still absolutely key though. As a filmmaker, you need to have a clear vision in mind well before you start shooting. But having things play out in real time enables you to explore additional ideas you normally wouldn't think of or have time for. When I started creating the shots, I've closely followed my initial shot list that I've made alongside the script. But because now I get to see everything in front of me, I immediately get flooded with tons of additional ideas. It's easy to get carried away and turn a 10-shot scene into something twice as long because you're not limited with render time and, well, because it's just too much fun really. But while this technology enables us to completely change the way we're approaching animation, I think the biggest challenge is going to be resisting that urge to be overindulgent and sticking to your own original voice. It should still be you making the creative decisions. The technology is only there to support you make better informed ones. Speaking of decision making, this is how intuitive it is to work in Unreal. You fly around with your camera until you see something that clicks with your shot ideas. Everything plays in real time, so animating the camera is fast and easy, and you don't have to wait for play blasts, which makes the iteration time extremely fast. Now you might have liked this particular angle because of the lighting, but it's very easy to adjust that if needed. Maybe a different direction for the sun, or a soft top light. Should I add a rim light? Is that maybe overlighting the scene now that otherwise should feel naturally lit? These are all of the questions you're constantly dealing with in animation, but with traditional offline render methods, this experience can be hours upon hours and even days or weeks. In Unreal, it's happening right in front of you in seconds. But let's go deeper in the possibilities. Let's say you're happy with your shot in terms of how the character is framed, but there could be some environment adjustments that could improve your composition. Well, you can just start sculpting around from the camera's perspective, and you can add additional foliage or background assets to help lead the eye to the focal point. None of this is particularly new in the world of animation, but in Unreal you can do this in real time in your completely lit environment in seconds. Pretty powerful. Furthermore, with an HTC Vive tracker and a few base stations, it's possible to create a rather inexpensive virtual camera for your home office. It works surprisingly well and is yet another incredible filmmaking tool to have available in this Unreal ecosystem. The real-time workflow has had a massive impact on my editing process as well. Once I have all the cameras animated, I can basically shoot coverage and export each complete mocap action from every camera angle. This gives me the absolute freedom to shape the individual scenes in editing, and again to be reactive to the final performances instead of repeating the editing process that was traditionally done in previs with rough and placeholder animations. I think the biggest value in working with Unreal Engine for me personally is the sheer iteration speed. When working with offline render engines, you're plagued with waiting on the renders to finish, and that can take weeks to just get the first edit out and actually see what you're doing. And yes, a lot of the interactive rendering options we have now with almost all render engines do help mitigate that fact, but I feel they all fall short in comparison to the true real-time experience offered by Unreal Engine. Of course, there are still many benefits to offline render engines, but I believe it all comes down to the nature of the film you're working on and the benefits you might get from different approaches. Having said that, after this experience, Unreal is the way forwards, at least for me, and it definitely was for this short film. I've never experienced anything like this. Making a 9-minute animated short film in a mere 4 weeks is something I would laugh off as crazy talk a couple of years ago. Yet, here we are. It's astonishing to think that when I started my journey in animation over 13 years ago, I had to wait for over 15 hours for single frame renders. Now we have these incredible tools offering real-time rendering and an entire ecosystem built around it, available to everyone completely for free. I can't wait to see what the future of real-time rendering holds, and I hope we can bridge the gap between live action and animation even closer. I keep imagining what it would be like to have a motion capture system in place that would record perfect body and facial performance with no need for animation cleanup. We would be able to shoot the scenes on a shot-by-shot basis on the motion capture stage with a virtual camera, dump the final shots on a drive at the end of the day, and start editing the film the next day. At this rate of development, that day might be closer than we think.